Tottenham Hotspur have done it. They have won the Europa League after beating Manchester United by 1-0, and in this video we're going to be breaking down how they did it, including a look at how they tactically nullified Man United and how Ange Postecoglou threw away his philosophies to get them the win. A game of limited quality, it must be said, but what it lacked in quality, it made up for with tactical exploits and tactical nous from Ange Postecoglou and this Tottenham Hotspur side. The understanding of their game was really clear to see, and it was already very evident with the way they set up not only their midfield presence, but also a changing to their pressing structure. Understanding that Manchester United are a very, very poor side creatively, they focused on the only area of the pitch that Manchester United would be able to exploit given enough space, and that was the centre of the park. Manchester United are going to fail creatively down the flanks with Mazraoui and Dorgu. Dorgu because he's a little bit young and a little bit raw, and Mazraoui because that's not simply his game. He can't burst past a player and then get across into the box. Tottenham are fine with him having the ball, and they're also fine with the Manchester United centre-backs having the ball, meaning that their focus needs to be on the centre of the pitch, and that is where the hybrid man-to-man pressing structure comes in within the centre of Tottenham's play. Basuma onto Ahmad, Bentancur onto Mount, and then Sarr swapping between Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes. Fernandes moving into a more central role once Manchester United have the ball, and that's when the second phase of Tottenham's pressing structure comes into play. With Pedro Porro and Udogie looking to pressurise the likes of Mazraoui and Dorgu, it was clear that Tottenham wanted to make sure that they were really condensed and closed down and narrow within the centre of the pitch. The narrower you make the pitch for Manchester United, the more difficult they have to really press through this centre of Tottenham. And it meant that when United wanted to go forwards, because the lanes were so condensed, because they didn't want to push their 10s into these wide areas to allow for space for the wing-backs, the closer and more narrow Tottenham got, the more difficult it was for Manchester United to create chances, and the lack of opportunity Bruno Fernandes had to really get on the ball. This was down to the good pressuring of Pape Matar Sarr and Dominic Solanke. Richarlison and Johnson doing their jobs to double up when necessary, but then looking to try and counter-attack, going back the other way to try and create some kind of attacking motion. But don't get this twisted. It very much was defence first, not allowing Manchester United to get into the game and not allowing them to create clear-cut opportunities. And this was very much down to the way they built up in the centre of the park and really closed down that space. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is a fantastic example of how well Tottenham did from a defensive point of view, and also how it gave them a platform to then be able to build off and go forwards. This is actually in the build-up to Tottenham's goal that they score a little bit later, and we'll be focusing on that later on in the video, but I want to focus on their defensive side first. Notice how narrow they are. You've got the two attacking midfielders or central midfielders in Basuma and Pape Matar Sarr. You've got Bentancur pressing onto Højlund. There is no space in this Tottenham midfield to be able to play passes. You've got Bruno Fernandes looking to try and get on the ball, but he's being marked by Dominic Solanke currently. You've got the likes of Casemiro who could be free, but Sarr is going to be onto him within a flash. You've got Udogie looking to pressurise because Ahmad is currently out of the play, and then even if he did come into play, you've got Van de Ven being able to shuffle across and make sure that the space is nicely condensed. But notice that the space for Manchester United is really out wide. That's because Tottenham want to focus on these inside channels. Cut out these inside channels and you prevent Manchester United from creating 90% of their chances. They cannot create out wide, and they really struggle to play in crosses. And even if they do play in crosses, you've always got the physical aerial capabilities of both Van de Ven and Romero. The pace wasn't there for United. The pace wasn't really in the game to begin with, and closing down the spaces in the centre of the park gave Tottenham the platform that they needed to go on. The most impressive thing from Ange Postecoglou in this game, and in contrast to Ruben Amorim at Manchester United, was the willingness to adapt his own style, philosophy and principles to be able to get themselves a win. And what I mean by that is Tottenham essentially foregoing their willingness to go forward and press, their willingness to go forwards and try to create further opportunities, not wanting to expose themselves to the space not only in beyond them, but also within the centre of the pitch. And what Ange Postecoglou came up with was not only brave, but also genius for the time and opposition that they were playing against. The option was very simple. It was drop back into a very, very low block, utilising Richarlison and Johnson as double-ups onto both Ahmad and Dorgu, preventing the likes of Mount and Ahmad from drifting into these pockets of space because of how low and how deep this Tottenham midfield line would be. Bruno Fernandes attempting to move forward in almost a vertical nature in line with Casemiro to try and overload the centre of that park was then again rebuffed because of the dropping nature of Pape Matar Sarr. It was then down to Højlund to try and drop into these spaces, but we know the lacking in confidence that he's got, and we also know that crossing into the likes of Van de Ven and Romero would be a very unlikely source of goals. This meant that Shaw, Yoro and Maguire had a number of different chances to cross, a number of different chances to pass, but they failed to really break through the lines, and that was because this really good Tottenham backline, this really good Tottenham performance prevented them from doing so. As I said, it was a very, very brave attempt to try and block out Manchester United, and it could have gone wrong, and there were a couple of hairy moments with Vicario. But the most important thing for this side is the idea of adaptation, the idea that you don't have to stick to one principle, one philosophy to get yourself over the line. It was in this moment that I think Ange Postecoglou realised that it was stick or twist, and he decided to twist. And it's in this, and in the closing down of the space, and in the preventing of breaking of lines, and in the stopping of Manchester United's main creator in Bruno Fernandes that Tottenham saw that victory in sight. It was then a case of working together, coming close, making sure you're nice, narrow and compact, and rebuffing those Manchester United attacks time after time again. And in the end, they thoroughly deserved the victory. Before we end, let's take a look at that all-important goal, the goal that made Tottenham European champions. I mentioned earlier on that Tottenham's defensive shape was a platform for them to build off and then go forwards. This is the follow-on to that image, and what you've got is Bruno Fernandes receiving the ball here. Notice the condensing of space from these Spurs players. They're willing to press, they're willing to go forwards, but making sure that that space is as narrow as possible, all converging on the centre of the pitch to make sure that Bruno Fernandes has very limited time and options to try and pick a pass. The moment this happens, it's then about how they try to capitalise. How do they stop this motion? And you've got Pape Matar Sarr right here intercepting a pass that Bruno plays to Casemiro. Notice how close they are to each other. It's really the only option that Bruno has without recycling back towards his players again, and it's really well intercepted by Pape Matar Sarr. It's then a case of driving forwards, taking the ball and utilising the space that's now been afforded to them. Manchester United had to overcommit. They had to go forwards to try and take some semblance of space because of the limited opportunities that they had in the wide areas. It was through this that Tottenham found their platform and then found themselves a way to go forwards. It was through Pape Matar Sarr finding those wide areas. And if you're familiar with the build-up to the game that we did on this channel, the actual preview that we did for Tottenham and how they could beat this Manchester United side, you'll know that we focused on the wide areas for Tottenham. We know that we focused on the way that Tottenham would want to cross into the box and the way that that helped facilitate their play, and that's exactly what Tottenham managed to do here. Pape Matar Sarr driving towards those wide areas, utilising Richarlison out on this wide area, and then utilising those movements to really pen that Manchester United side back in. Notice this really crucial, important run. I'll explain why it's important in just a second, but we need to understand the actual defensive line of Manchester United. Bentancur is going to make a really deep-lying run, and this is really good for two reasons. Number one, it takes away Bruno Fernandes and just diverts his attention a little bit. The second thing that it does is notice Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire is now going to half follow this run because he has to. He can't just leave it. Notice the space between the likes of Yoro and between Maguire, and it means that when you've got that pressure, when you've got that run, it just forces Maguire to drop just a little bit. Notice this here, and this gives Brennan Johnson and Dominic Solanke a big in. It gives them a little bit of space to work with. So as the ball gets played through into this channel of space, United have to respect it, United have to defend against it. It gets recycled by Bentancur very well back out to this wide area. But now look at what you've got. You've got 1, you've got 2, and you've got 3. With our build-up, we focused on the importance on the difference between the centre-back and the wing-back. Dorgu and Shaw are here. Shaw's not a natural centre-back. Dorgu is very young in his wing-back role and in his essentially playing time as a footballer. He's very young. And in this, I think a lack of communication happens. We need to give a massive amount of credit to Tottenham for exploiting this, but it's really, really well done. As the ball gets recycled back, you've now got Pape Matar Sarr in space just off of your screen. This is because the Manchester United side have dropped, and it's a really good way of orchestrating a play by just moving those Manchester United players around a little bit. You've now got to try and hit one of these two. It's a really good whipped cross from Pat Matasar, and it gets into the box. It goes round and just tries to focus on one of these two players. Notice the positioning of Brennan Johnson right here between Luke Shaw and Patrick Dorgu. As the ball goes in, you've now got this movement from Johnson. This is so crucial. This movement is absolutely brilliant. Dorgu should be following, Shaw's ball watching, and you've got Maguire focusing on Solanke. This moment is fine, but these two need to be a little bit more switched on. This moment is fantastic. The pass and cross is absolutely sensational, and it just hits this zone right here. It is a nightmare cross to defend against, but it needed to be defended by one of these Manchester United players. It just so happens that Brennan Johnson managed to get on the end of it. He sniffs out that danger, he sniffs out that opportunity, and he manages to get something on it, and it bundles into the net. It doesn't matter how it goes in, but the way that the goal was created and the way the goal was orchestrated was absolutely fantastic from a Tottenham point of view, and they won't matter how it goes in. They won't care about how it goes in. It was a fantastic goal and a brilliant team performance which saw them win the Europa League and, like I said, become European champions. It was a proper display that showed a completely different side to Tottenham and Ange Postecoglou. But of course, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.